Faces and chapters from the Central European legal heritage. Welcome to the Central European Legal Insights, the podcast series introducing the professors of the Central European Academy at the University of Miskolc through insightful conversations with Judit, Varga.
Law steps in when there is a problem, and we don't want problems in families. So somehow we can to help member of families to cope with problems, and this should be the role of family law. Mm-hmm. And we need to make everything to help these parents to raise their children in a safe environment. That means economically safe environment, kindergartens, schools, respecting parents. So I would say this is a long journey, but very important, because if we don't invest, we will not survive. I was very happy because academic freedom is the pillar stone of our work, because we are not attorneys. We want to keep our free mind.
Welcome to Central European Legal Insights, the podcast series of the Central European Academy at the University of Miskolc. My name is Judit Varga. I work as a senior mentor at the Academy, and I will be your host in this podcast. In each episode, we present the faces and the personalities of the Central European Professors Network. And throughout the friendly conversations, we would like to bring you closer to the very rich diversity of Central Europe's legal heritage. And also, we would like to explore the ideas and the stories beyond science that connect us in this region. With this introduction, I warmly welcome in the studio Professor Dr. Aleksandra Korać Graovac from Croatia. She is a full professor of family law at the Faculty of Law of the University of Zagreb, and also full member of the Academy of Legal Sciences in Croatia. Dear Professor, welcome to Budapest.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and hello to you and everybody. I'm very pleased to be here.
So we would like to tackle a lot of issues of the family law, which are very exciting, ranging from the demographic challenges, family protection in general, and also at the European level, and also the parental responsibility. Professor is a long-standing partner of the Central European Academy. She's a member of our Professors Network, and we look forward to a future cooperation. And in order to warm up a little bit, I would like to introduce you as a person, because the very objective of this podcast is to bring closer those legal scientists in this region who are dealing with the most important legal aspects of Central Europe. So why did you choose to become a lawyer when you were younger?
It's a very difficult question, because I had three wishes. One is to
be
opera singer. The second one to be a watchmeister, and the third one was to be a lawyer.
Watchmaker, watchmaster.
Yes, with
like
watches.
in Switzerland.
Yes. Because I was impressed by how machines are working and how time is going by also. And but I chose to be a lawyer. Maybe mostly because influence of my uncle, because he
himself is a lawyer.
Yes, I never met him. He lived long time ago. He died maybe 40 years before I enrolled Faculty of Law, 35. But this nice story remained in our family memories, so I decided to be a lawyer to honor him in a way. Oh. So it's subconsciously, but
inherited with the.
Yes, I don't know how, but we are not islands alone. Sometimes our choices are made by unknown influences
and
unconscious influences.
I agree. And how did you choose the family law branch?
Family law. I was very interested.
As a mother of a child.
I became the mother of a child later as a full professor. It's also interesting, but my family story is that my father was divorced, and then he met my mother, and then I came, and I was always interested why it happened and how is it possible. What is in families that destroys them, and then connects them in a way. And I'm so happy because nowadays I have a very good relationship to my older sister. We love each other very much, and I think this is a great gift for both of us. So, in a way, it is a sign that if something is destroyed, it shouldn't be forever. So, there are some other values we get in our lives, some other people, but that was the most. I think when I think about this. This was one of these inner pushes why I was interested in family law.
Actually, if we look at your research material, there is a very strong basis for the children's aspects during divorce, how to safeguard their rights, their interests.
Yes.
So maybe this personal experience also had an impact on this area.
Yes, because I look at it from, I watched it from another side, from father's side. That wasn't always rose. Because and I understood that people can be different, can play different roles in different situations, and to accept this. So it's more psychological, but family law is connected with psychology as well. And when I came to the first meeting with my students, I asked them, you think family law is very nice and interesting? And they say, yes, yes, yes. And I said, no, it's a tragic.
It's tragic, yeah, because
you need to implement law where love, positive emotions, and everything positive should be in place. Law steps in when there is a problem, and we don't want problems in families. So somehow we can to help member of families to cope with problems, and this should be the role of family law.
This is quite a statement already in the introduction,
somehow.
Even before entering the professional part of our discussion. May I ask you about the highlights of your career? What would you point at if you look at your professional track record? What were those momentums which were of special importance for you?
I don't think I had a spectacular career. Things just happened, came to me. One, of course, PhD was very important for me. We don't have habilitation, so in that time it was the first step into the scientific world. And then I had a very good late chief who led me to the world of science. We were very different ideologically, but then she told me just keep on science, and everything is going to be okay. And then later I found out it's not so easy because family law is not just science; it's also politics and ideology as well. But she helped me a lot in the very beginning, and then I had the chance to go to Strasbourg to some committees of experts of family law, and then I was exposed to very different approaches to law, and we struggled a lot in 3 or 5 commissions. We didn't understand each other, even English with Dutch professors, and especially Mediterranean from this Mediterranean
and
part.
what was the lesson learned for you from this phenomenon?
Yes, and then I understood. There are so many differences. What is the way out? I tried to figure out, and then I came to the conclusion that it's very cultural linked. So it's not. Very wise idea to uniform family law.
To harmonize everything.
To harmonize.
It still
not
belongs
even
to
harmonize, but unify.
Unifying.
It's even the step further.
If I'm correct, it still belongs to the national domain, but there are constant attempts.
It's still yes, formally.
Formally, yes.
But when we take into account jurisprudence of the European Court for Human Rights, in very sensitive fields, or European Union, family law is not formally part of in the interest of scope of European Union, but through procedural questions, it is, as we can find out, that judgments, these decisions of Luxembourg really influence, and Strasbourg family laws in specific countries. And this is somehow, now we are going further and further.
Yeah, but we can enter the professional discussion on family protection as part of family law. So just go on.
And now, I was also a member of International Society, and I'm still of family law. So we had these scientific conferences. Mm-hmm. But there is a huge difference when you are a member of commission who writes convention or recommendation, and when you are just a participant in the conference. That are completely different things.
Responsibility and completely different tasks.
Yes, and how to reach an agreement if you are a part of a body. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you think you did everything, and at the very end, this recommendation doesn't come to the light. So it was really a huge experience, and now I'm a part of I'm a member of Professors Network, and this is completely different.
You contributed to many of our books.
Yes, and we made we exchanged ideas, and also we what is the most important to me, we made friendship, and what is the difference? We understand each other better, because in international societies there are different influences, and here we are from this Central European and Eastern European region. We have similar development due to influence of socialism and another concept of law. Now, there are different legal systems in family law as well, but we understand each other somehow better, and I like this very much.
This is a very special example for the general motivation of the establishment of the Central European Academy, because here in Central Europe, although we are very diverse, we have many basic similarities.
Exactly.
When it comes to our culture, tradition, and we provide a platform for this exchange of our cultural.
And the problem is, we discussed in International Society for Family Law on the side with our colleagues from Central European countries, that we should establish a separate society. Under Society of Family Law, because we felt as we are not heard enough,
like in other legal domains.
Yes. So you are here, but okay, you are members. I appreciate very much also society that gives opportunity, but somehow we felt different, and we discussed it, that we have much more to offer than we are able to offer.
And we are stronger together. So I think
exactly.
The Central European Academy is wholeheartedly supporting such attempts to be heard and to establish maybe a subcommittee or sub-department or a special committee on Central European family policy aspects. My question would be, how did you come across the Central European Academy? When and how started your...
It started almost 5 years ago, at the very beginning, and my colleague from Novi Sad, Professor Gordana Kovačić-Stanić, asked me to join, and I was very grateful. I said immediately, because I appreciate her very much. Yes, if you say this is a good idea, thank you very much, I will come. I didn't know what is the project like. I said immediately, okay, this is...
and what was your first contribution? And in which Professors Network did you take part for the first time?
Family protection.
Because there are some books, not all of them, to which you contributed throughout the years. And in one of your theses, you write, because I collected some of your statements, thoughts, and let me just quote some of them in order to introduce the family protection discussion. So quotation from the Family Protection in Croatia by Professor. It is often submitted in the literature that the family goes through a crisis. In support of that thesis, some point out, for example, the increasing number of single-person households, postponed marriage, postponed birth of the first child, climbing divorce rates, and an increase in the number of single-parent families either at the child's birth or after dissolution of family union. This is a statement which could equally go for many other countries, not only in this region, but also in Europe or globally. And as a full professor of family law, let's start by a very general question of a very general nature. What are the key principles of family law and family protection, and not only in your country, but if you have an overview on Central European countries, what do you see as key principles?
We can start from protection of family. This is the most important one. Then equality of women and men. This is very important because we inherited it from previous time. Although it was in socialist time, it was just, let's say, on paper. And this is because women used to work.
Yeah, that was the status quo.
Yes, 2 or 3 jobs, in fact.
Yes.
They were overburdened, and they are now overburdened as well.
I feel it.
But they had economic self-independence. This is very important for equality. Then equality of children, no matter how they are born in or outside the marriage. Nowadays it's not important anymore, but it used to be. And then protection of vulnerable adults as well. Special protection of children without parental care. So these are the most important principles everywhere, I think. They should be. And also we have some other sub-principles for special family law institutes, but these are general principles that are very important.
And do you think that there are any differences in the approach to family law in Central European countries and the Western countries?
Yes, I think.
Maybe it's a too big question.
Yes, it is, because the first maybe key issues nowadays is what is family consisted of and what should be family. Now, European Court for Human Rights recognizes right to family life to different family forms. And in our Central European countries, we usually value as firstly marriage as heterosexual union. And then, of course, homosexual unions have registered partnership, has recognition. In Croatia, the same recognition in effects like marriage, but it's a different name. So we have this difference, for example. Then non-discrimination principle should be the same, but not so far away, fathers of children born of wedlock in Netherlands or in Germany didn't have the same rights as married fathers. And we had equal rights for adults, for parents, and for parents of. We had different rights for parents of children born out of wedlock and for children born inside wedlock, no matter how the parentage was established. It's also the difference, and it's very important as well. So we promoted joint custody. I mean that. Parental responsibility isn't extinguished after divorce if there is no agreement between parents, and this is also very important. And also, of course, protection of children, no matter how they are born, hereditary rights and right to protection, to be protected by both parents. So these are very important key elements. It seems that protection of adults who are still under guardianship in Central European countries is a little bit not so developed according to new standards.
And what are those new standards?
New standards are somehow maybe also controversial, I have to say, because new standards are because of the conventions on the rights of people with disabilities. They shouldn't be under guardianship, and new standards are that every person needs to have legal capacity, in sense that has right to act as has full capacity. The problem is why I try to find the right word. It's a difference between legal capacity and translation could be also business capacity. And we were kept in translation. Cached in
the challenge of the European policy making kept in translation.
Because even Germans, I think, translated falsely, and a committee of UN committee had to give interpretation of this article, and then we found out that we accepted that every person should have shouldn't be under guardianship. And we still have guardianship systems in Croatia and in most of our countries. And but this is a very specific question, because if you allow a person who has no mental capacity to act and not to harm his or her interests in property matters and in health matters, personal matters as well, then somebody has to protect it. And I think the problem is in the construction of law, civil law, because we have valley tax, and it depends what if this person is misused by somebody who misused incapacity of this person. So NGOs who protect people with disabilities, they say if they have some property, let them spend it, no matter what it is. Yes, but they are an easy target for predators as well. So we didn't, even in Croatia, we didn't adapt. It's a difference between supporting decision making and guardian decision making.
Coming back to the definition of family, because you referred to it earlier, we had an urban legend in diplomatic circles years ago when a Hungarian state official went to the UN, to some committees, and she was asked about the definition of family. She said, yes, father, mother, and child. And they said in the UN, oh, my dear darling, this is a learning process, because it's not just that. How would you react to it, also having in mind what your constitution contains about family? And if you could just tell us about the history of the family definition in the Croatian laws, and how does this react to the modern trends which are coming from other countries, from the mainstream European policy making as well. So what is your experience, and what is the situation now?
For quite long time, we never had, in fact, in family law definition of family.
In family law level.
Law. But we have the definition who is considered to be a member of the family in different legal branches. So we had quite turbulent experience with family laws, drafting procedure and enacting at the very end. And after some process of modernizing family law, incorporating children's rights, and strengthening divorced or separated parents to be parents, ensuring them parental rights, right to parental care, and then in 2014, the law was changed, and somehow it was felt that the aim of government is to introduce homosexual marriage, and there was the first national initiative for referendum.
It was in 2014.
14, and on the first now is 12 years. On the 1st of December of 2013. It was held a referendum and
proposed what?
That marriage has to be heterosexual, and that marriage is union between
a man and a woman.
Yes.
So, and this was initiated by whom?
It was a citizen initiative. It was initiated by NGOs, in fact, but
who were protecting the traditional
families. Yes.
And but it was as a reaction on the proposal of the law.
No, because proposal was it was. I think I don't know how, because I was not
from a legal historic perspective.
I was not in the initiative at the very beginning, but later we heard that there were some rumors that homosexual marriage will be introduced in the Family Act, and lately Minister of Administration admitted this in one of conferences. That time government wanted to introduce to enact homosexual marriage, but later after.
So then the referendum proposal came, and what that?
No, first referendum, and then minister admitted that I think these actors who initiated this had good sources, because what happened with
it was like then a preemptive action to the law.
What happened with a non-marital relationship, for example, if I may just say, it's the problem. We live in divided societies. I think it's also the common problem of of many countries. So we think that life and legal system begins with us, and if we don't find some common values, if we don't agree on some common values, like the best interest of the child, protection of women, still. Protection of weaker family members, like older. So if we don't find somehow a common platform, then we always be two steps further, 3 steps back. And this is the problem, that we need to persuade the others that we know how to draft a family relations act better.
I think family law is under I might say pressure, but let's say it's facing challenges. And if we analyze the reasons, do you think it's just coming from among the citizens, or coming also from abroad, like a trend, like a mainstream, which also significantly influences civil society's opinion and position? Because you refer to the split in the Croatian society regarding and the challenges of today's family policy. Do you think this is also influenced this civil society position or opinion from outside?
I'm sure it is, because we see what the mainstream is. But if we look at, for example, European values research conducted in several waves, last one in Croatia took part in 2017, there is still prevailing family. 98.5% is the most important thing.
Yes, I read
75% people think that mother and father are very important for raising up the child.
Yes, I also have this quotation from you.
Yes, and this is so important. This is common platform. Of course, I don't want to diminish rights of the others, but as society, if we make some frames, then we need to discuss why and how. For example, if we talk about mother and the father, of course, if you have a mother who has a female partner, you will not take her child away because it's her human right. But are you forced to help a female couple to have the child? This is another question, like adoption, and this is really a difficult topic, and it's we can't see this influence transparently, but we can see it through media, through some decisions and other things.
And can we assume that this trend is coming, but how countries in the regions of Europe are reacting to it are really different in Central Europe. If we look at the recent Slovakian amendment of the Constitution, if you look at the Hungarian overwhelming position of the society regarding the traditional family values, can we come to the conclusion that in Central Europe this is a very strong position comparing to other parts of the continent?
It seems it is. It seems it is, in fact. When we come from conference, we see completely different approaches and acceptance and how mainstream overruled some countries. But it seems we have to be honest, it is a difference. And as we started at the very beginning, harmonization, unification, even, it's not possible unification, but...
uniformization.
Yes, uniformization of family law. I think that I should stick to Englandon's statement that family law is strictly cultural as well. So you can't force family relationship with legal norms, and you don't need to change the environment by forcing. And it's a different approach. For example, I like Hungarian approach because you tried to enable couples to have as many children as they want.
Yes.
So then, so you provide, it seems, for enough economical resources,
incentives and resources,
and you keep women, mothers in labor market. So not just made dependent upon their...
because the whole economic policy is based on families.
Exactly.
And those families who are on top of having children, they are also doing efforts for the country. Then through the taxation policy, they are the beneficiaries of the whole taxation and economic system and labor market of the country.
And I do remember... one discussion of our ministers, she wanted to lift off taxes for cars, because if you have 3 children or 4 children, 4 children is impossible to have if you need to to go together as a family, and then you have somehow. A pardon from state taxes if you want to have children with many families.
Yeah, well, one of the best export products of the Hungarian policies the family
to laugh. Ha ha ha! She wants to allow families, somebody to drive around without paying taxes. Yes. Because these children will contribute to taxes 25 years later.
And we value the effort what a mother and a woman is doing for raising children.
This is the first.
This is
and father, hopefully.
And we all know it because we are working mothers.
Yes, it's an enormous effort.
But maybe this is not the place for advertising the Hungarian family policy, but I'm very, very happy to hear this from a Croatian professor. Do you think that this kind of best practice, what, for example, Hungary shows, has any impact in the neighboring countries? Does this affect your Croatian policymakers?
The problem with demography policy is that it's a long period process. If you start with measures like now, like in Hungary, you need to trust that that you will see effects in 20 years later, 10 years later. I think that the primary consideration is budget, is state budget, and it depends on what politicians want to achieve. If they want achieve more popularity, they will come with measures out. And but as I wrote somewhere, it's also the question of trust, because if you have often changes of political frameworks, then new one diminishes old family allowances and benefits, and
Yes.
There is no trust. But I'm sure that politicians, at least scientists who are dealing with demography, they are looking at experiences of other countries. So it's one of arguments how it slowly changes, but still changes. And we know, for example, I have to criticize some cities' demography politics. It was obviously, we had in Zagreb we gave the status to mothers as caregivers. It was not perfect because mothers were turned out of the labor market. Mm-hmm. So for some time, mothers who had 3 or more children for some time. And then new city government said, this is not good measure, we don't want it. Mm-hmm. And shortly after, number of third born children sharply declined. And the question is what we want. Do we want more children or not? More deaths or more births?
We just jumped now from the first the family protection topic to the demographic challenges, because let's come from the broader perspective. Mm-hmm. Let's end up with the broader perspective. And you yourself contributed to this beautiful book on demographic challenges in Central Europe, and this was, I show it for the audience, to your dear listeners. It was published on the occasion of the Hungarian presidency of the Council of the European Union, because this was one of our flagship topics during our Hungarian presidency. And we were happy to have you here in this book. And we shared this product with all the ministers in the council responsible for family policy. What would you recommend for them as a summary policy recommendation? Because you yourself mentioned many occasions that the family policy has a great importance and impact for demographic policy. And we all face the same changes, we all face the same challenges. He just talked about this city policy, which from one regime to another seized one measure, and then suddenly demographic waves were just turning down. So what would you send as a message for policymakers in Central Europe?
You can't have demographic policy without investment. So it's not popular because it's long-term effects.
Yeah. So and doesn't return in a couple of years.
Yes, maybe this will return to another government or the third one after you. Who knows? So it's not the first is this decision making. We need to make decision that we want to invest in families. Everybody will say families, children are so important for most of people, not for everybody. And as there is a right to have children, there is also the right not to have children, but there should be the choice. And choices should be supported. And this is not only, these are not only policy measures like tax benefits, family allowances. It's everything very good. But if we also, if we encourage media to promote families as well, because in Croatia is problem if you have 4 children, 3 children, something is wrong with you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So this is the wrong message. I think it's also very important to encourage that families with more children are not families in risk. And we need to make everything to help these parents to raise their children in a safe environment. That means economically safe environment, kindergartens, schools, respecting parents. So I would say this is a long journey, but very important, because if we don't invest, we will not survive.
And do you think that Croatian people are special in this respect? What their special need would be in order to have more children? Are they?
I don't think so, because somehow this is.
They are all the same.
Everybody. The problem is we have a new project. We didn't talk about this, about assisted reproduction technologies, and one of the problems is what I learned from my research, that this is a global problem in developed, so-called developed Western world. First thing is that we decide to establish families later and later. So possibility to have children is
shortening.
If you start with 25 and if you start with 35, it is not the same thing. You don't have time to have children. It's biology. It's very simple. So I think the key would be to persuade to found a family in earlier stage of life, and to promote this lifestyle that offers to young couples also possibilities to enjoy our nowadays living standard, but also have children in a parallel way. And the good thing is that we are very family connected inside families. So the role of grandmothers and grandfathers is huge. So grandmothers and grandfathers are still ready to help, and
it's still a general phenomenon in Croatia that several generations are living together.
No, they're
and
not
helping
living
each
together,
other,
but
or helping each other. They are closely
but they are
connected.
helping each other. They are closely connected, and even it was really funny to see on the advertising that a small city close to Zagreb started the project by paying grandmothers and grandfathers to take care of grandchildren, to help. And first I thought, why to pay grandmother to cook the lunch for grandson? Why? But it has some sense because pension is quite low, and instead of paying somebody else much more, it's kind when the state, when authorities can step in and make a win-win situation. But I don't know. I have to think about this idea.
When you are working on your thesis concerning new challenges or way ahead for family law, do you use any methodology to test the reaction of the society, how one measure would work or not? Maybe do you use questionnaires?
Family law?
Family law, is it impossible, or is just not your method?
I do remember when I was the member of several commissions for drafting family law. It took. Then we really worked as a team. Before, once we had we initiated through ministry some questionnaire, and we summoned the answers, and also there were representatives from different branches, from bar association, judges, social workers. So we knew what the problems in practice were. We at our chair we had a special booklet where we wrote whatever somebody was asked for, because if you don't work in practice, we don't, as professors in Croatia, we don't work as lawyers in practice,
or attorneys.
Well. No, as attorneys, but we cooperate. So we wrote down everything what we heard, what might be interested, and what we found out from our research. and we had the concept what should be changed. But so it's more from practical experience. Once we had the Institute for Family, and the idea for this institute was to find out what the problems are, but not just legal problems, also interdisciplinary. But it's a pity it was turned off. It doesn't work.
So in general, you cannot contribute on a daily routine for the decision maker or for the decision making process with your results.
Only with lobbying.
With lobbying.
It's very difficult because even in the last change, this joint parental responsibility courts, municipal courts and county courts started to judge against contra legem in something what was in the Family Act is written: if there is no parental agreement, there is no joint custody, and then the practice has changed.
Similar situation, yes, and we can talk about it later as well.
And municipal court said first in Zagreb, no, it's against the best interest of the child, and you should be free to rule.
So they created a room for maneuvering.
Yes, but then there was amendments to Family Act. The government didn't dare to touch it. They just stick to
the formal text or formal
constitutional law decision, because they didn't want to open. They didn't dare to open another issues.
Well, let's come back
Pandora's box.
I have some own experience in this respect. But earlier I posed a question and you answered it. But I had my reason to ask that question, because in one of your works you answer with your own words, and I would like to quote it again, because it sounds so nice. What the family law has a meaning, has an importance in the lives of the citizens. Family law indirectly helps families. Indirectly, it's very important. It provides a safe legal framework that establishes the clear rights and duties of family members, and additionally, family law principles offer insights into common values. The later elaboration of these principles into particular norms built a family law system that supports family members, whether family relations are harmonious or turbulent. And unfortunately, as we already tackled this topic in our earlier chatting, that family law usually comes in when the family is undergoing turbulent times. The most tragic situations when a child is losing a parent, or when parents are divorcing. And this is why the family law has to provide a framework based on those very principles which are coming from the values of the society, like the surroundings, like the background, the provisions and the measures which are operating. They should give that kind of room for maneuvering, so that either the judge or the parties can choose the best option in that very situation, which is so colorful, so diverse in each and every situation of the individual's lives. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. I have my own experience. While I was in an office, I gathered a big working party. I invited many NGOs, ranging from women's rights or fathers' rights, prosecutors, attorneys, institutions, authorities who are dealing with the children, and also judges who were experts on family law. And the outcome was a very brave proposition, especially tackling this issue, to give enough freedom for the judge to be wise in a situation where the law, in this very formal nature, would not allow to be human, to be kind. And it was a huge step, but beforehand we had a very deep discussion, a very long one, with all those stakeholders. So I could feel this kind of safety when proposing that law, that at least those who are dealing with family law and this very special topic of the custody, the parental custody during divorce, I have their position. And the majority of them encouraged me to be brave. And this has already, I think, at least 3-4 years practice in law. We have our bumps during the introduction. We did our best to train judges, to train attorneys, to introduce and then use the law in a bona fide way, avoid any kind of misuse or abuse of that new possibility. And I think with this change, we managed to evaluate or managed to realize the very purpose of family law. This is just a little example. So you can also say about your own experience. What was the reason why you also came to this conclusion in theory, although for the time being you could not introduce it into the effective law?
I have to congratulate you.
Oh, I did not say come up with this for this congratulations, but thank you very much.
This is changing of common opinion, of attitudes, and encouraging parents to remain parents. This is the most important thing, because we lived before when in case of family dissolution, very often only one parent took care of and responsibility for the child. And this is a very difficult position for the child as the most vulnerable part, and also for both parents, in fact. So there are somehow very easily we can have 3 victims, and the price of we should I think that we should always reduce the price of divorce. Divorce is sometimes unavoidable. So it's natural, human also, that you make wrong choices, or that something happens in life. You can't control the life, of course. But if it happens, then you should have harm reduction, and the most important thing is the child. And I'm very happy to hear that it's possible. Something similar happened, and we had support from a very different NGOs and experts, like from feminists to fathers unions, and we were very happy to have this support that we should re-establish joint parental responsibility as much as possible. It's not always possible. Sometimes it's not in the best interest of the child, but we all know from psychological literature that, and we always say that the child needs a mother and a father, and if there is no some of them, somebody else needs to take this role into the child's right. It's also the question of human rights. We don't need to forget this
is
parents'
a very
rights
important aspect.
and children's rights. So. I think this is a good approach to new circumstances and how we live.
And what is now the effective law? Could you please just tell to the audience?
Yes. Since 1990, we introduced very soon after Convention on the Rights of the Child as a principle that both parents have joint parental responsibility, but somehow, and we spread this idea for 14 years, and then suddenly a new approach came, implementing mostly German and Austrian legal system that was behind. Somehow, and with idea that joint parental responsibility should be only if both parents agree.
And if there's no agreement?
And there is no agreement.
Then legal provisions come to...
Yes, only the parent with whom the child lives. And we thought, majority of professors, of academicians thought that this is really 2 steps back. Because we know from conferences, from exchanging attitudes that divorce is kind of, it's not static, it's dynamic process.
And it takes a lot of years.
And how this will work like. And if you have enough support for family, like family centers, mediation, psychological support for parents who are ready to accept this, so you can go through with less harm, and you can keep both parents alive in the children's life. So and then it was just a huge motion, and as I said, municipal court changed this idea and somehow in practice amended the act. But very funny, it remained enacted even after the possibility to be changed.
We had a similar situation before, because the jurisprudence itself wanted to be flexible and human. And all what we done, actually just codifying the practice.
I think
to make it legal.
Family judges have to be, now to praise English, and have to be Anglo-Saxon lawyers.
Yes, common law lawyers.
They need to have common law. They need to have more freedom. They are supposed to refer to the best interests of the child as much as possible when it is necessary for the protection of the baby. They have instruments to do this, because they can refer to Convention on the Rights of the Child even if there is against the law. So
because this is a higher ranking.
And what happens? That mostly parental agreements, when they are settled, are just this is good when there is parental. This is another side of medal. That very often there are some agreements, but they are not agreements. In fact,
yes, they are not taking.
So, family lawyer shouldn't be just an administrator. Family lawyer should have enough life experience and enough freedom. I always say family lawyer should be a little bit elder person, not and we heard that today 67% are women. This is not good. It should be.
We needed both. We heard it today at the conference.
Yes. 67% of municipal judges are women, and it also the problem of trust somehow. And also, we often we gave up of marriage as a value. I think now it's only on individuals' autonomy. And I think some marriages could be saved as well if there is enough prevention, family centers, possibilities to where family could seek help and get help as well. We also heard today that it's so long queuing time for psychologists, young people say, because when there is a problem in family, very often parents don't know how to address it, and it makes also turbulences in families. So it's a very difficult time to live in. And we made a little bit away from our main point, but to be the parent and to remain to keep parental responsibilities and to be able to provide parental care. And why both parents? Because somehow they are the first persons who are able to notice that something is wrong, and they are the first persons who may react and to correct. I know from my personal experience, sometimes we argue about approach to parental care. My husband, he has a male approach, and I have a female approach.
Yeah, that's evident.
And then we are so often, even we are not on the same level approach very often, but we discuss and then we try to find some compromise how to approach the problem. And this is autonomous correction inside the family. And if this is possible, this is good. But very often people are not aware how to communicate even in families and how to reach agreements, and this reflects later.
And what do you think, how we could increase the public consciousness after the family dissolves, then the parent remains to be a parent?
I think it is somehow already achieved, because I think that fathers' associations step in somehow. It happened due to some divorces of very important persons. So fathers took a more active role, but somehow it stopped, and because of this violence question that also influences family roles. Now this pendulum against this toward mothers, and there is a sentence in the southern part of Croatia. It sounds give the child to the mother. Dite materi. It's in this is completely opposite of this. In fact, this is patriarchal approach, and I think these associations are not aware, because if you keep the main parental role to mothers are really important, especially in early childhood, and almost nobody can step into mother's role. It's natural.
Yes, biology.
But don't push out fathers. Yeah. They also have their role.
They are equally important.
So it's very important to not to always paint fathers as men as violators, as dangerous persons, and just try to keep them active as well.
You just referred in a slight sentence to human rights in parental care relations. So what is the value of parental care as a personal and human right? And then what in modern Western societies threatens this right, in your views? Because you are tackling this issue also in your...
Yes. But, no doubt that European Court for Human Rights and constitutional courts, our constitutional courts, addressed parental care as for the protection for family life, and in this environment, in the under Article 8 of the European Convention, it has its value and importance. But we know that Jura vigilantibus sunt scripta. So parents have as many rights as they want to care for these rights, and as much as they are enabled to care for these rights. That means this is not just legal question. This is also the sociological and psychological question as well. Because we know that to be a parent is demanding. It needs time, resource. Of course, you know. It needs other resources. The most important one is time, and we live in societies where your job giver, your enterprise, tries to get most of you, and we need more money. We need more time to be on work. So it's very difficult to balance private and career. This is one question, and another one very important is exposure of children to different educational programs and also social networks and media. And it is sometimes I ask myself, is it possible to exercise parental rights instead of protecting children as much as I should as a parent? Mm-hmm. Because there are also different topics, different influences. Because if my child is exposed in a school program to some topics and I don't like it can be religion issues or sexual education or anything I can't agree and I don't agree with. This is another part, and this is one part mm-hmm. of issue, and another is hidden world of my child, and the problem is I can't access it. And I think it is really important to protect children in this policy level from social networks and everything.
And influence.
Influence, yes. And I heard today even exposure to child pornography made by artificial intelligence. Hungary protected. It is extremely important because we need somehow to try to give opportunity to parents as well to have time with their children and to educate themselves, mm-hmm. because you can't control. You can maybe, but I don't believe this control smartphone of your child till certain age, but later there is trust. And so you need, as I heard, and I was also educated, you need so much time to build trust. And I need to put myself on side mm-hmm. to build trust, and later to pray not to that this will work. Mm-hmm. Because even if you control your child's smartphone, you can't control your child's friend's smartphone. So somehow I think state should step in, but not like big censorship, mm-hmm. but somehow to show that there are consequences if child are exposed to pornography, if child is used for from pedophile networks, and so on and so on. So this is one part of mm-hmm. This is also one part, and also education, how education is performed. Nowadays we had huge discussion about sexual education.
Huge discussion. What do you mean?
In Zagreb,
in the society, or in Zagreb? In public debates, or in the parliament?
Debate, and also there was a special session of Parliament's committee mm-hmm. for family, and it's interesting. In fact, there was no conversation. It was not a dialogue. Only one party arrived. A party who wanted to ensure that parents have a right to influence sexual education of children, not allowed to be their children to be exposed to early sexualization.
Those parents' rights which are there to protect their
yes,
children from external
yes,
influence.
Yes, and the other advocates of other programs,
they were not present.
And
what happened?
I think they should go to citizens' education because there is no. Because if we don't have dialogue, we don't have. We then act from the position of force. This is not good. Maybe we will not agree on 90% of topics, but if there is a 10% agreement, this is the beginning. And I don't like this. I'm idealist. I always want to stay open for dialogue,
for debate.
For debate, because I noticed that I changed my standpoints. So I hope
others can
as well. And I feel this as my personal, professional, and human development.
And today, Croatian children are allowed to use their phones in the school?
And yes, but now there is a proposal in Parliament.
So you can copy us, because in Hungary it's not allowed.
At least at primary schools. Mm-hmm. But and I think this is and funny. Parents opposed. They said, if something happens, if there will be earthquake or fire or whatever,
we also had
situation. So we will put telephone cells. Or you can go to the director and take your phone, some public phone.
Yeah, if there's an emergency, of course. But
of course.
In Hungary, we introduced it quite recently, and the first reaction was some kind of strong criticism. But after some months, it was the teachers' society who said it was a very good decision, because finally the average life of school looks like in our age or when we were young. Children are communicating to each other, they are playing with each other, because instead of looking at their telephones or iPhones, they are trying to interact with their friends, with their fellows. So this brought back that ordinary type of playground panorama at schools. What happens in the pause between the different sessions? The children are forced without their telephones to find a way how to play, how to interact, how to be a social individual. And this is very valuable, because we also have some studies from the psychology science that the early use of those devices will us physically disable to be social or emotionally sensitive towards our fellows, because that kind of organ will not develop properly.
And when I drove to Budapest, I heard the podcast.
You were listening to a podcast while driving?
Yes. And this is the goal of transhumanism, it was said. Not to be social, but just our brains in a net.
Connected to someone on the other end of the planet.
Intelligence,
and if you look at this threat from a national interest, a national identity point of view, which is one of the most important research area of the Central European Academy, if among the very bricks of the society or between individuals, we don't have real relationship, how can we build up a family, then a regional society or a nation? We lose this kind of attachment, this kind of relationship. So this is why it can even start with a very ordinary measure of prohibiting the use of iPhones at schools. It starts by this step, for example. So you are also looking at this solution in Croatia?
Yes. And I hope this will happen.
Okay, let's talk in a year. What happened?
Hope so. I think good things.
Dear Professor, we are approaching the final part of this discussion. Unfortunately, time is running so fast when we have a good company. So I just would like to use this opportunity for the advertisement of the Central European Academy. We are building networks, as you are also a member of this professors network, but we also look for the younger generations. So we have PhD programs, LLM programs. Why would you recommend to your students to come to Budapest, to come to Miskolc University, to enter this world, what we created here?
I think they will step into another world, but in fact, very familiar world, because here they will have chance to be taught by experts and excellent experts from our countries, Central European countries and Eastern countries. And it's somehow different because they will hear different voices. Not just mainstream voice, not just that one thing is the one solution is the most important. Mm-hmm. We also experience that we were developed in different directions somehow, but also we have this common heritage. So they will really have chance to first to see how work should look like. I think what I found, where is your success? I was thinking today, hearing Professor Silagy, and one thought was working ethics. Mm. So I never ever experienced the expression that something is difficult here. So you work like, we would say, like donkeys. You work very hard. And when I communicate with students, they also work very hard. But they feel very happy because
they enjoy being themselves.
This is win-win situation. Mm-hmm. So one thing is what I need to praise. There are different approaches and different system of values, and there is a pluralistic society. But one thing is that I have never experienced censorship. Mm-hmm. And this is one thing what somebody could say, this is just one way of thinking. Mm-hmm. No, not at all. Now I'm an editor one of our books. Okay. I see.
Which one?
This is the best interest of the child and assisted reproduction technology. Mm-hmm. It will be published soon. It's quite a new approach because it links not adults but the child with this medical necessity in modern society. And I had different chapters, and I could really see also in our previous book
the
diversity. So it is in a good sense open society, and you are not forced to think like this or like mm-hmm. that. And we discussed what the parts of our chapters should be like, but never the content.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to hear that.
I like this. I can witness this as my... And I was very happy because academic freedom is the pillar stone of our work, because we are not attorneys. We want to keep our free mind and to be free to discuss.
And then broaden the horizon.
So this is one thing. And the other is you really had so different topics and projects. So I think really students can find what they need. And another thing is they will have open door to also to Europe as well, because English sometimes may be an obstacle. For me it was as well, because sometimes I was a little bit reluctant, mm-hmm. And you can see I'm not a young generation
perfectly communicating
English speaker. But really it's a different and very positive, pluralistic and open-minded approach.
And English speaking, so that others can also...
so everybody can come and understand.
And get to know us, because this is
yes.
a challenge for our region,
and
to be heard.
Also, it's very important you are up to date. So blogs,
This podcast is also part of this being up to date. Dissemination is key for our work to be heard. This is why we communicate in English. That's why we write in English, so that those who have no knowledge about this region and they don't find our specificities, they can access a wide range of books and materials. Let's play a little game at the end, because today you represent Croatia. And if you have a chance to send 5 truth messages about your own country, which is not known to everyone.
Legal messages?
No,
or?
Anything. Gastronomy, social challenges, anything, history. Or maybe there are some misconcepts or misunderstandings about your country. Now you have the chance to correct. If you feel like playing this game.
I would like, yes, but I have to think about it because it's spontaneous.
3 truths is enough. What is the
2
best
hours
food?
later I will change.
Yes, you can.
Lamb is the best food.
Lamb is the best food.
Yes.
I can approve that.
Lamb and fish. So for
the coast
very
is
beginning,
beautiful.
Islands are the most beautiful islands for me. But don't come in July and August. Best time is June or September. You will find very friendly people and very nice people, good-looking people. Oh. So if you find your partner here, please, you are welcome as well. And we are very, very in spite of all obstacles, sometimes we experience some consequences of homeland war. We didn't have chance to develop so much as other countries that didn't have this experience. But we are very family friendly, and we are, I would say, a nation with a big heart, no matter when we sometimes argue. And if somebody needs help in Croatia, it will get it for sure. So please come and try. Even you can enroll some of our faculties.
Thank you very much. I do it very often. I regularly visit Croatia, thanks to our neighborship. It is a very lovely closing remark. Thank you very much for that. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to us. Our guest today was from the Zagreb University, Professor Dr. Aleksandra Korać Graovac.
Thank you, Dr. Varga, for inviting me. And
please continue working with us in the future. Thank you very much. So we say goodbye with Professor Dr. Aleksandra Korać Graovac.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Central European Legal Insights. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels for updates. To discover more conversations from the series, be sure to explore our other episodes. Thank you for listening.